Today is not only Youth Sunday, but it's also Graduation Sunday. And we had, as you saw, two graduates this year, and they were each acknowledged in our earlier two services, so we don't have any present with us this morning. But just for those of you that might be new, I just will share with you that we have a small gift that we give to each one of our graduates, and then we asked the parents to write them a letter that I read to them on behalf of their parents, and so that's how we acknowledge our graduates each year. We've all been through school, and when we're in school, you know how the routine goes. You spend a few days or maybe even a few weeks learning about a certain topic, and then comes the test, right? We get the test to see if we've retained the knowledge that we've been taught, and you know, tests are fairly straightforward. You have questions before you, and you just have to give the appropriate answer. And in some subjects, that's pretty easy, like math. You know, I'm not a math teacher, so maybe I'm wrong on this, but I would imagine that grading a math test would be fairly easy. They get the right number, or they get the wrong number, and you know, if it's right, it's right, and if it's wrong, it's wrong. And it's very black and white when it comes to math. Probably the same with sciences. But then there's English. English has always kind of intrigued me. Now, there's definitely the grammar portion of English, and so, you know, do we start our sentences with capital letters? Do we end with the correct punctuation? And there are certain rules that we have when it comes to grammar, and those would be easy to grade also, but in English, there's also the content piece, and so you might follow all of the right rules grammatically, but then there's sort of grading the flow of the writing and the sentences and the thoughts that are there. And I think that would be much more difficult to grade if I was an English teacher. You know, what to take off for, and I don't know, it's just sort of more of a gray area, I think. Sometimes we have questions, and sometimes the answers aren't so black and white. Man, it would be easy if they just were. We ask questions and we get answers and they're just right or wrong and it's just easy. But sometimes we have life questions, and sometimes the answers aren't so easy. I'd like to share with you a couple ideas that kind of illustrate this point. There was a German philosopher and theologian. His name was Rudolf Otto, and he coined this term. It's a Latin term, and it's this mysterium tremendum. And it means the tremendous, or the great mystery. And he applied this to God, saying, God is just a great mystery. And there's some things about God that we just can't articulate. We just can't explain them maybe in the ways that we want to. One example might be this idea. In Psalm 19, we read these words: "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies proclaim the work of his hands." And when we look out across all of creation, maybe you've had a moment where you've seen a beautiful sunrise or a sunset or mountains or the ocean, and you've looked at creation and you said, there is no way there is not a God. I can see his fingerprints all over this world, and it just attests to his existence. There must be a God. But sometimes that God that we believe in doesn't feel very present. Sometimes he seems absent from our lives. Sometimes we see the fingerprints of God, but sometimes we can't see the hand that left those fingerprints. And that's just one of those great mysteries of God. I know he's there, but sometimes I don't feel his presence in every moment of my life, and I have to kind of balance that out, make sense out of that. Another theological truth that we believe based off of Scripture is that God is perfectly and infinitely holy, and he cannot sin, and he cannot be even in the presence of sin. We believe that God is perfect and set apart. We also believe that the Scriptures teach us that he's gracious, and he draws near to us sinners. And that seems like a tremendous mystery as well. How can a perfect God have an intimate relationship with sinners like us. How can these both be true at the same time? We don't know why God loves us, but the scriptures clearly tell us that he does. We're all familiar with John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only begotten Son, that whoever would believe in him would not perish but would have eternal life. God definitely loves us. Romans chapter 5 verse 8 demonstrates this as well. And it reads, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. God demonstrating his love for us. Even though we were sinners, we didn't deserve that, but Jesus laid down his life for us anyway. Ephesians chapter 2 verses 1 illustrates this point as well. We read, as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. And that is true for all of us. We were at one time lost. We were satisfying our own sinful desires. We were going away from God. But God, out of his great love for us, redeemed us. And I can't explain why he did that. But he did. And it was out of his love for us that he did that. We don't have to fully understand it to experience it. We don't have to have a complete knowledge of all of the things of God to experience his presence in our lives. We're reminded of this in Isaiah chapter 55, verse 9, when we read, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. God's ways are beyond what we can comprehend. We'll never in this life fully understand all of the mysteries of God, but we don't have to fully know them to experience them. So there's a thing called quantum physics that I don't know anything about. And someone shared this idea with me recently that just blew my mind. And I like to think of myself as a pretty big thinker. And I like philosophy and theology, and I like to be challenged and think kind of these difficult thoughts. And someone shared that the universe is expanding. And so somehow time and space are connected. They kind of depend on one another. And the universe, if it's growing, is growing into what? And I thought, okay, you're well beyond my comprehension. I just can't fathom that. If the only way I can try to understand that is that the earth is expanding into space. But if it's already there, if it's expanding into space, then it's already space. If we were at the edge of the universe, what would be right on the other side? I just don't know. And maybe if you understand quantum physics and you're a scientist and you study these things, you can make sense out of that, but I can't. And I'm pretty confident I never will. And I'm okay with that. There are some things that I just don't know and I won't know. And I'm learning to be okay with that. And I think the same can be true for us as we explore the things of God. There are some things that we just won't know. And we can be okay with that. I want to give you 4 scenarios now. I want to share with you 4 ideas. You just try to put yourself in these situations. I want you to imagine first that you started your own business from the ground up. You had the concept, you created some product, you've got your own business, and it's successful, and it is your livelihood, it's your income, and it's doing really well, okay? Everything's just working, and you're living off that profit, everything's good, and then for some reason, your business goes under. Let's just say your building burnt down, and your business is over. And there's just really no practical way that you just don't have time and the resources to rebuild and get back on track. By then, you're going to have lost customers, and it's just just gone. I mean, that would be devastating. That would be hard to deal with. And maybe you're the kind of person, maybe you have that kind of spirit and that kind of attitude that says, well, that would be hard and I'd have a lot of work to do, but I would just start a new business then. I'd just get after it and I kind of pick myself up and have to just keep pressing on. Maybe some of you could do that. And maybe some of you would have the attitude that would just say, if I poured my life and my heart and soul into this, I just don't think I could do it again. I gave it my very best effort, and I just don't have it in me. But either way, that would be devastating if you lost your wealth. And now here's a second thing I want you to try to place yourself in the shoes of a person, and maybe you actually have been this person, and you receive a phone call, and it's that you lost someone that you love. I've lost a few close people in my life, but I've never lost, to my knowledge, I couldn't think of anyone that I've lost unexpectedly. I lost some grandparents, I lost my father, but they all had some pre-existing conditions that I knew that was coming, so I was able to at least somewhat brace myself for it. I've never gotten that phone call and just found out news that someone that I loved and cared for deeply is just now gone unexpectedly. Maybe you've gotten that phone call, and so you know what it's like to deal with that. If you haven't, you can imagine how difficult that would be. Here's a third example. Maybe you receive a phone call, and some of you may have, where you have gotten knowledge that you have some kind of health condition that's not treatable. And doctors are saying, we're going to do what we can to make you comfortable, but there's just really no cure for this, and whatever this is, you're going to have it the rest of your life. That would be hard news to receive. And then a fourth example. Imagine if you were the kind of person, and I think most of you are, the kind of person that really wants to be a good, upright person, a person of integrity, that contributes to society, just an honorable person. You want to have a good reputation. And you spent your life doing that, and then you find that someone has it out for you, and so they start to spread rumors about you, and they start to tell lies, and unfortunately for you, people are believing these lies, and now they're starting to look at you funny and kind of keep their distance from you, and there's really nothing you can do about it. I've lived my whole life to be a good person, and I try to do the right thing, and now my reputation has been soiled. That would be difficult to deal with as well. Now imagine that all four of those things happen at the same time. In one day, you lose your wealth and your health and your family, and people are starting to question your reputation that, who was this guy really? Maybe he's not what we thought he was. I can't wrap my head around how difficult that would be, but that is the story of Job. In one day, he lost his wealth and his family and his health. And his friends were even starting to question his reputation, saying, Job, there must be some sin in your life that you haven't confessed to the Lord. Maybe you've got some issues you need to work through. And if all of those things happened to us, I think we would have questions. I know I would. And that's what Job did. At some point, he went on for chapter after chapter after chapter, just complaining and whining about his situation. And eventually he cries out to God. He says, God, why is this happening to me? And the Bible doesn't spell it out specifically, but when I read it, I kind of get the impression that he kind of calls out with a little bit of pride in his voice. I hear him kind of arrogantly saying, God, I need some answers. Why is this happening to me? Can you give me an explanation? And God does. If you're a parent, you've said this to your children. Your children ask you, but why? And if you're a good parent like I am, you respond with, because I said so. Right? That's the right answer. I don't really owe you an explanation. I can just say, because I said so, and that's good enough. And when we look at the story of Job, I think, in a sense, that's kind of what God says. He says, Job, I don't owe you an explanation. I don't have to tell you these things. Maybe it's just because I said so. In chapter 8 of the book of Job, verses 1 and 2, we read these words. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm, and he said, "Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me." So God says, Job, I'll ask the questions. And then for the next 129 verses, God responds to Job in a very powerful way. I won't read all 129 verses, but I've pulled out a selection of some of the things that God says in this lengthy passage. God says to Job, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow or seen the storehouses of the hail? Can you raise your voice to the clouds and cover yourself with a flood of water? Do you give the horse its strength or clothe its neck with the flowing mane? Does the hawk take flight because of your wisdom and spread its wings toward the south? Does the eagle soar at your command and build its nest on high?" And on and on and on he goes, questioning Job. Do you have the power to do these things? Do you have the wisdom to know these things? He puts Job in his place. And then Job responds in chapter 40, verses 3 and 4. Wisely, Job answered the Lord, and he said, "I am unworthy. How can I reply to you?" I put my hand over my mouth, and Job acknowledges, "I get it. I was out of place. Who was I to question God? I'll shut up now." And I think the story would have ended just perfectly there. But God saw fit to go on and on again and continue to question Job with another lengthy spiel. And he says, "Oh, and by the way, can you do these things? And are you smart enough to know these things?" And then Job responds again. And I love what he says in chapter 42, verse 5. And I think this is what I want you to hear this morning above all. Job's response to the Lord is this: "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you." And I think that Job in this moment says, I knew about you. I had this knowledge of you, and I really wanted to do the right thing. I want to honor you, but now my eyes have seen you. Now I know you. And that's good enough for me. Because as we finish the book of Job, what we find is that God never gives Job that answer. God never says, "Okay, now I've berated you enough. I've put you in your place. Now come up on my lap and we'll have a little talk and I'll tell you why I did those things." He never says that. He just leaves it. And Job comes to this realization where he says, "I'm okay with that. I know that you're God, and I know that I'm not. That's fine." And Job lives out the rest of his days and dies never getting an answer to this question: why do all these things happen to me? Here at Louisville Christian Church, we want you to learn and grow in your faith, but we do not want a congregation full of people that know about God but don't know God. So my encouragement to you this morning is that you need to walk with Jesus. We don't want to go to church and to Sunday school and to Bible studies and to youth group just to fill our heads with a knowledge about some God that's out there somewhere. But we want you to walk with Jesus. We want you to experience him and have a relationship with him. Being that this is Youth Sunday, I asked some of our youth what it means to walk with Jesus and how they walk with Jesus. And so we compiled a short video for you to watch.
It means that you've accepted God and that you're always striving to do the right thing.
Following God is listening to what he says.
Walking with God means trusting in him every day and praying to him about everything, even about the good stuff in life.
Walking with God means to follow him and trust him everywhere he leads.
It means to follow his example every day of your life.
I pray to God, I know he'll answer my prayers.
One of the ways I walk with God is by worshiping Him through music.
I walk with God by admiring the beauty of creation.
I walk with God by reading my Bible every day.
I walk with God by hanging out with other Christians at settings like the church, youth group, and at Round Lake Christian Camp.
I'm proud of our church that we're a congregation of people that want to walk with Jesus. Parents that are walking with Jesus, you should be commended. And you're raising up kids that want to walk with Jesus. Our two graduates this morning are both athletes, and pretty good athletes. If you know anything about Tyler and Erica, they've done very well in the sports that they compete in. And I was thinking about them and preparing this message. I wanted to wrap up by saying this. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 54 through 57, we read these words of victory. It says, when the perishable has been clothed with the imperishable and the mortal with immortality, then the saying that is written will come true. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, He gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. I love that in this passage we see the victory of Christ, and I also love that He talks a little smack in the middle. Did you see that? Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? Because you didn't win, and you can't hurt me anymore because Jesus defeated death. Now, does that mean that this world will be all unicorns and rainbows and everything will be easy? It'll just be smooth sailing from here on out? No. Because in John chapter 16, verse 33, we're reminded that in this world you will have trouble. We all will. You will have trouble and I will have trouble. But take heart. I have overcome the world. Jesus has overcome the world. He's defeated death. He's defeated sin. And we know how this story ends. It pains me a little bit to use such a cheesy cliche. But we get to pick what side we want to be on. And we can choose the winning team. I know. It's cheesy, right? But it's true. We all have a choice to make. And we know how this story ends. When we read the Bible, we know that God wins. And so the choice is yours. You can respond to God's great love for us by saying, thanks but no thanks. I'd rather do things my way. I trusted myself more than I trusted you. I'm going to do my own thing. You can make that choice. That's yours. But you're choosing the losing team. Or we can say, Jesus has defeated death, and I'm going to follow Him. I'm going to dedicate my life to Him. I'm going to serve Him. I'm going to be on the winning team when it's all said and done. We get that choice. If you've made that choice this morning, we celebrate that with you, that you're walking with Christ and you're part of the Christian family, and we're going to live together someday in eternity with Him. And if you haven't, we would love to talk to you more about that and extend that invitation to you, that we can tell you about this good love, this good news that God has for us, and walk you through that decision.